Well, here we go.
You're under me this time.
Well, no, this time I'm top and you're
We're not side
below.
by side.
What's going on here? How can I get rid of this?
I know that message on the bottom, I can't see you. It,
Yeah,
it says
what's
welcome to live chat. And
totally right. It's like I
I can't see Brian's pretty face. But you're still here, right? There we
well, I
go.
can't see you. How'd you get rid did you get rid of it?
No. I think we're supposed to turn the phones the other way.
I don't know, but what if I do that? No, orientation is locked. I got to keep it straight up and down.
Yeah.
How the fuck do I get like it doesn't let me even if I
Don't
hit learn
swear.
more.
We're live.
I
I
know.
know. And I'm hearing your audio here and there. It's very strange. Let's see how I can mute that. Everybody thinks we're idiots. Should we get started, Brian?
Yeah, I guess I'll look at this message on the bottom of my screen for the next
I know.
30 minutes and assume you're behind it. But I don't know.
That's bizarre. Hold on for 1 second. Anyway, how was your week?
My week was good. I
Good.
actually got some good quality riding in on consistent days for the first time in like 2 months. So it's been great. Yeah, I can hear me through
I can
you.
hear you too, through you, or through me. Anyways, that's great. I'm going to ignore that audio and just pretend that we're here talking to each other instead of hearing an echo. And yeah, training, it's been good. I've had a good few weeks as well. And I'm excited. I'm at that point where we're just going to build a little tiny bit more and then we go into taper. And I'm like, whoa, that's going to be exciting and nerve wracking all at the same time. And I'm super excited to race. Your race is next weekend, right?
Yes, next weekend. So I leave
Yeah.
next Wednesday. So I don't know if I'll be on the call next Wednesday or if I will be in between airplane rides, which would be amazing.
Ah,
It'll give me something to
maybe
do at the airport. So I'll
you
see. I'll have to
could.
look at my schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, let me know because I might bring on a guest. I was thinking about that this morning.
I don't want to miss it. It's like the last week. It's
I
like
know.
test week next week.
I know. So hopefully you don't miss. So maybe we'll massage the schedule. So everybody will take a look and see what we can do. Nobody's chatting today either. Is anyone there? They expect us to be starting 20 minutes late. So. Anyways, how about racing? Let's talk about the women's Olympic road race.
So
Dude,
good. So
it was
good.
so good. Now, did you know Kristen in New York?
Yes.
Did you?
I did. I didn't know her personally necessarily, but in the racing scene, you
Yeah.
know, it's a pretty common story actually with New York. It happened with a couple triathletes as well and other cyclists where
Evelyn
you,
Stevens, right?
yes, Evelyn
Same kind of
Stevens,
story.
same kind of story.
So, for those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, there was a very interesting hero story in the women's Olympic road race this week. And Kristen Faulkner from the United States took the gold. We'll talk about that in a minute. But, Brian, tell us about the New York racing scene.
Yeah, so New York City racing scene is very vibrant. So as everybody knows, or most people know, we have Central Park in the middle
Yeah.
of Manhattan, right? This is 6 mile, 6.1 mile loop, so it's basically a 10K. And there's a club there called the CRCA who hosts all the race in Central Park. So I ran a race team there called G for D Productions. It's a group of like 15 people. I used to run the Rafa racing team there. I coached Rockstar team. So there's multiple teams within the CRCA. So we're sub teams basically. And it's a completely non-for-profit cycling organization that's one of the oldest cycling clubs in the United States. And it promotes youth riding and all this stuff. So they host 12 races a year in Central Park. So on a Saturday or Sunday, we're in there. And what they also host, which is amazing, is a lot of race clinics, especially for females. Um, so they do multiple. Now they actually do like I think 3 to 5 race clinics for females only for women racing. Um, and it's great. What it is anyone can sign up for it. It's completely free. You don't have to have a racing license or anything like that. And they stage a race essentially. So we race Central Park, 6 mile loop. So you might do like 4 to 6 to 8 loops depending on the division. And what they do is, it could be a group of, let's say 20 women show up to do the clinic. They'll have coaches in the race with them. So there'll be
So
like
a
4 or 5
mentored race
coaches.
experience.
Exactly. So they'll let the race kind of unfold, and these coaches will kind of like saddle up next to people and be like, okay, hey, there's a break that's up the road, right? What do we do about this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do we just let them go? We gotta get this peloton together and start pulling and working with each other. And so it's a great way to learn how to race or an experience. And it's a great segue into a lot of these people that show up in New York City. I mean, come on, we're all type A type of people. But she came from a rowing background. So what happens is a
Right.
lot of times a lot of rowers get into cycling because it's this competitive, intense thing. And rowers are good. Like they make
Yeah.
great cyclists, right? They can suffer. So she just like she hit this racing scene. I want to say it was about 8 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago, in one of these clinics, and then started racing right after. And literally, like the next season, she was just winning left, right, and center. She was
Right.
on Dave Jordan's cycling team. Who
I know Dave.
Dave? Yeah, Dave.
She also, do you know Tara Parsons?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
absolutely.
So she's a friend of mine. Actually, she introduced me, I think, originally to Matt.
Oh,
So
probably.
we can
Yeah,
blame her for all of this. But
yeah,
she was telling me she pinned a number on her for the first time. So the first
yeah.
time she ever
Tara's
pinned a number on in bike racing, it
Yeah, so
was
Tara works with CRCA. She's one of the directors of CRCA. She handles the coaching and education aspect of CRCA for
right.
years. It's all volunteer board.
Yeah,
So she's been on it for a really long time. I've worked with her for a long time. She's awesome. Such a
she
great coach.
is.
She's a great
So
rider
she
too.
also brought me in years ago to New York to do a bike fit
Oh,
clinic
nice.
for for the CRCA women with Happy Friedman, who I know you know,
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah. I
Ben
love Happy.
Serrata. I know Happy is happy. Haven't heard from him recently. I'll have to check him out and see if he's still doing his thing. But it was super fun, and they brought in a whole group. We were at the hospital for special surgery, and
Yeah.
it did a walkthrough of a bike fit. I'm one of the folks there. But yeah, so what a great experience. We have a similar program in Northern California called the Early Bird Racing Series, which is 5 consecutive weeks of clinic, then mock races. They used to be good for upgrade points, so a lot of folks would show up and just try to smash the
Hmm.
points. But now they're good for experience points versus upgrade points. But yeah, so I guess she started racing 7 years ago, and the media is making it sound like she came out of nowhere. She didn't. There's a good podcast if anyone's interested that Girls Gone Gravel did last week about the Olympics selection process. It's very confusing to people why we have the number of racers we have and why those specific racers were chosen to race specific events. And part of it is the International Olympic Committee, and part of it is the United States Olympic Committee. And it has to do with how we performed as a country last year and how many spots we get. And one of the women who got the automatic selection to the road race was Taylor Knibb, who is a triathlete who's never done a road race. And she also had the spot for the triathlon. And so she very graciously, I think, stepped down kind of last minute. Kristen had already been selected for the track team
Correct.
for Team Pursuit. And so they were able to assign that spot to her. And it's a very complex process of how these assignments are made. But what a Hail Mary, let me just say. So, for those of you who don't know, she attacked late in the race with 3 super heavy hitters. All of them easily could have won the race, and they pulled her back in. So she's off the front by quite a bit. And the group worked together, got to her. She immediately attacked again, which is perfect racing strategy, right? You want to hit them when they don't expect it, and that's when they don't. They should expect it. The best racers in the world, right? But she goes, and then what happens, Brian? Did you watch?
Yeah.
I
They
assume.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's no way I wasn't watching that. I actually
Yeah.
kind of called my kids downstairs, like, because I was watching the replay. I was like, "You guys got to come down and watch this."
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, she executed perfectly, right?
Yeah.
So there was 2 up the road. She was driving. She was coming back with Kopecky, and Kopecky is one of the greatest one-day
Oh,
racers. I think
yes.
currently she's amazing. But you could tell Kopecky was struggling, and Faulkner knew she was struggling, right? So she was doing most of the work. So once they caught back up, she just went and no one followed. And really
They
what
looked at
happens
each
there,
other.
they look at each other. And what it
Yeah.
is nobody wants to make the effort to
Right.
follow, right? Because if I'm one of those three and I do all the work to pull her back, well, one of the other two have been sitting on my wheel. They're going to attack, and now I'm dead,
Right.
right?
And there's
So
only 3 spots on that podium and there's 4
right.
racers.
So
So who's
what
going to
they're
get the sprint?
thinking is it's a little game of cat and mouse, and the fact of saying like, all right, well, hey, I don't care. I'll take second or third. Like, who cares? If you care enough to win gold, then you're going to start to. You're like, well, hey, the race is up the road. Gold is up the
Mhm.
road. I either got
Yeah.
to go for it now, or I'm settling for second or third, or possibly fourth. Right?
Right.
One of these three women are not going to be on the podium.
Yeah.
And that's what they're really thinking is like, all right, well, what's my chance to get on a podium here? So I don't want to work.
Right.
So basically, the three of them sit there and stare at each other, which is the great calculation that she made of going up the road and being like, well, who's going to chase?
Right.
Right. And it worked perfectly. Like
Yeah.
the three of them looked at each other and basically soft pedaled for the most part up towards the finish. And then it just becomes a sprint game of, who's strongest is going to win. And it was a tight sprint. Like, I
Oh,
don't think I've ever seen that. I mean,
yeah, photo
photo finish
finish for the
for
3 of them, and poor
for
Vass
second,
didn't
third,
get
and
it.
fourth,
Yeah.
right? Like, oof.
Yeah.
But
But
if you haven't watched
powerhouse.
it, if you haven't watched it, go back, watch the replay, watch the last 10K. That's really where the race happened, was the last 10K, I'd say, last 15 to 10K. And it's it's amazing bike racing.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
really just great bike racing.
Anyone who
So
says women's racing is boring hasn't watched women's racing, in my opinion,
I
right?
I just don't understand why people have that opinion. Like,
I
or
know.
what? Like,
It's
what's the?
crazy.
It's not like they're slam dunking, right? Like in basketball, you can be like, all right, I really have to watch people slam dunk, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, women aren't slam dunking; they're passing a lot, great shooting. But in cycling, it's like, okay, the men are
It's
going
chess.
27 miles an hour, the women are going 25 miles an hour. Like, you
Right.
can tell the difference? No, I can't
Yeah.
tell the difference. It's the same freaking sport. Like,
Yeah.
if you like watching men's cycling, then you should like watching women's cycling. Like, there's really no different other than, do you know the names? And probably
Yeah.
not. So watch it for a couple months and you'll know the names. Read the
Right.
articles. You'll know the names.
Watch social
Um,
media. It's very interesting also because the International Olympic Committee in the past has had an embargo on social media and interviews and that kind of thing in the Olympic period, in the Olympic Village as well. And they lifted that this year, which is why we're seeing, Simone Biles and all of
mhm,
the athletes on social media posting all kinds of stuff. And what's interesting is the women are embracing it, and I'm not seeing anywhere near the men. And maybe it's just what I'm following, but I've also heard that in several other outlets. Like this is the first time in Olympic history we've had equal the number of spots for women and men. And the women are just all over social media showing us, every aspect of the experience. Well, not every aspect. We know there's other aspects we don't
yeah.
want to see, but in the Olympic Village. But yeah, it's been thrilling, and in all the women's sports, and the United States has done fabulously, I think. The other interesting thing about Kristen, I will say, so you have a connection. I also have a connection. She started racing in New York or started riding in New York in 2017. She moved to California when she decided, oh, I'm pretty good at this. I'm going to try to make
Hmm.
a go. And she was racing locally. And I remember I was commuting by bike to a bike shop at that point, and her name started showing up on the top of all these random Strava segments on my commute, and it was about a 20-minute commute. So it wasn't, I mean, it was just surface streets and everything. And I was like, who is this woman who has all these QOMs on Strava, the best times on Strava? And so I started looking at her and following her on Strava, and it was like she would go out at 4 in the morning and she would go do, 100 miles at 10,000 feet before she would start work in the morning. That was like her
Yeah.
extended commute. She would go up in the hills. And I remember her racing here in 2019 and as a Cat 3. So when we start racing, we all begin as a Cat 5 and we work our way up by gaining experience points and upgrade points through placing
Race
well in
overseas.
racing
Yeah.
or winning. Yeah. And and then when you even think about the fact that not only was she just racing as a Cat 3, a beginner basically in 2019, but 2020 didn't have a lot of racing going on because of that little pandemic that shut things down. So she had a pretty fast rise, and I think she's still on the upswing. She is going to improve and improve and improve. She's the one to watch, in my opinion.
Yeah.
She's going to be our next generation of really fast women. So,
And that's the difference, I think, is where you see this uprise. It does happen in women, I think, later,
oh yeah,
because the quality of racing is hard to come by for women. Like that's the
yeah,
problem with New York City. Like New York City, yes, is a great. So in the Central Park race, there's four categories on a Saturday. You have the A field, the B field, the C field, which are all males, and then you have the women's field who all race together typically.
right.
So
Which is
Cat 1 to Cat 5, which is horrible, right? But the
right,
men's A field and B field will have 70 to 100 people in each field,
yeah,
like a huge amount of people. The women's field might be 20 to 30.
right.
And again, it's Cat 5. Well, then they now started to actually break it up a little bit, but back when she was racing, especially, it was Cat
Hmm.
5 to Cat 1.
Right.
So you're
You would
taking the
never
best
do that with a man.
riders. No, God, no. Like you'd be out the back in 2 seconds, right? And it
Right.
does happen for the women as well, which really, limits your ability to become a good cyclist if you're a Cat 4 or
Right.
5 because you're not even in a race.
Right.
You're
Riding.
miles behind by
Yeah.
yourself. So it's hard for her, for women, especially New York, is because when they do get good and they hit that Cat 1 and they're
Hmm.
starting to race at a higher level, they leave. They have to leave
Yeah.
because
Right.
the
They need
the
to race with
quality's
more
in there.
racers. Yeah.
Now, if everyone stayed, gee, oh my God, like New York
Right.
City women's racing would be off the hook,
Yeah.
right? But they end up traveling to California, stuff like that, to kind of get more of that. So as her race experience increases, and that's the thing with, one of the major differences between Olympic road racing and the World Tour road racing and what we watch the Tour de France and stuff is there's also no race radios.
Right.
So you don't have a director in your ear telling you what to do. So for her to know to attack when she caught to initially attack, like that's race savviness that you
Right.
have to know. The race
Instinct.
director's not telling you. Yeah. So that's personally what I found really impressive about is that her acuity of racing is just so good. Like
For
she's
someone
really
so new to the
so
sport
new
too.
to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
to have it, to not in the US, we don't grow up with bike racing.
No.
We're not watching it on TV like they are in Europe and other cycling mad countries. Um, and then the men's race too was also pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Remco Evenepoel is the first person ever to win a time trial and the road race gold.
Oh, interesting.
Never happened before
Yeah.
for males.
Yeah.
So pretty,
Well,
pretty,
and the
pretty
Olympics
impressive.
also have a very interesting dynamic because when you look at the trade teams, the pro teams, they are made up. They have to be a majority of people from the country of origin of the team. So let's say it's a Dutch team, so at least half the racers have to be Dutch. But then you have racers from all these other countries. So you're teammates with certain people during most of the year. And for this
Hmm.
one race, you don't have teammates. And you would say, well, you've got your country mates, but they're not racing strategically together. They're all there for themselves for the most part.
Correct.
Um, yeah. So it's a very interesting dynamic where you take this team sport where we are racing with a team goal and you may have a designated leader to all of a sudden every man or woman on their own. And you may have some teammates who you care about who you're not going to you're not going to help them in that race. And that can
Yep.
be very interesting and challenging. Now, the men just finished the tour, and I know a lot of people kind of picked and chose what to do there. The women start this coming week, actually.
Yeah.
The Tour de France Femme is beginning, and so it'll be interesting to see how everything unfolds there. There are some women who chose not to go to the Olympics because they were targeting the tour, and some women who are not going to the tour because they were targeting the Olympics. But I think it's probably a little easier to come out of this one-day race and go into the stage race than the men's
For
situation where you've got
for
21
sure.
days of racing and then you have
Yes,
to
but
go to the Olympics.
Remco,
Yeah.
they actually had someone was talking about it that Remco had seen in the past that 2 weeks post Grand Tour he usually has a big fitness bump, and
Yeah.
that is the case when you think about like what we're doing training wise is we're trying to do overload,
Yeah.
right? Well, there's no greater overload than the Tour de France or a Grand
Right.
Tour, right? Now the
Or a
question is
training
how
camp.
how fast do you recover from that? So
Yeah.
these guys are fitter coming out of the tour than they are at any point in time during the tour, right? Think about it.
Right.
Like I've done this much more training, I'm going to be fitter, but our fatigue level is so low that
Mhm.
like we can't use the fitness necessarily.
Right.
But being 2 weeks post 14 days, I'm sure he took a lot of rest days, right? He really didn't do anything hard. He was just letting the body recover.
Yeah.
Then all that fitness comes to fruition on that day. So he
Yeah.
knew going in that he was actually going to be feeling pretty good, where some other people might not. They might not recover the same manner, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I'm 48 years old. I don't think I would have been recovered after 14
I
days
know.
of, the
Right.
Tour de France. Like,
Right.
I'd see you next
21
year.
days. Yeah.
Yeah, 20. Well, I mean,
That's a
14
really
days
good
post.
segue though when we start to talk about, and I think people are finally in our group are really starting to embrace recoveries
Mhm.
and rest. And I think that's super important. Right. So same thing applies in our little block of training here. We should do a stage race next summer. That's what we're going to do. We'll do a stage race that goes
We
along with
can
the
the
tour.
like tour or one of that. Yeah,
Yes.
I did
Isn't that
that
a
in our
great idea?
studio when I had a studio in the city. We did the same thing. Like we would have a sprint day. Like if it was a hill day, like
Yeah.
Queen Stage day, we did a climb day, things
Look
like
out,
that.
people. This is what we're doing next year. It'll be great. We
Yeah,
could do all the grand tours. Anyways, as we look at, rounding into the back end of our training and the fatigue is getting significant. You can see it when folks are posting. They're stoked because the fitness is good, but some of the days are harder than others for them. And that's a little challenging mentally. You go in and you're like, ah, I knew I could have done better. Or I um I just couldn't do it today. I wasn't strong enough. I'm not in the right league, right? Everybody else is in a different league. And I picked up on those conversations today. And that's what made me think about, how are we effective in our training and how are we not? And I thought we'd talk about that just a little bit as we're talking about
yeah,
training with power and how to execute these workouts and whether or not we're a success when we don't succeed at a workout, right? Is there any
yeah.
failure in the workout? And what do you think about that? If I
I
can't complete a workout, does that mean it's a bad workout or a good workout?
depends.
Yeah, that's
So
always the
like,
answer.
why did I not complete it is really a question. Did I not complete it because I didn't do my recovery day? Well, then it
Yeah.
was a bad workout. You didn't do what you could have done because you spoiled it. Am I rested and fed and all that stuff? And it's hot outside, and
Hmm.
I can't hit the numbers because of other circumstances, but I'm still trying my hardest, and my heart
Right.
rate's still responding in the same way. Then it's a success. Um, it's always talking about what's the goal and the point of this workout.
Hmm.
And as long as I got to that, then it's okay. It doesn't, the numbers are targets. The numbers are guides. The numbers aren't the workout. It's not like,
Right.
oh, I have to hold this for this period of time. Always remember these numbers are estimations. None of this is clinical. Even if we were in
Hmm.
a lab, they're still estimations. We're estimating what's happening. So with estimations, anyone who's ever done construction in their house understands that estimations are like at least 30%, 40% wrong. So, like we have to always understand that these
Both
things are
schedule
estimations.
and expense, right?
Totally. And the
Yeah.
same thing with like our watches and our Aura rings and our sleep schedule. And we wake up and we're like, oh my God, I only got 65% sleep and our
Right.
65 score. And my deep sleep was this. Like, again, these are all estimations based off of what your heart rate is doing while you're sleeping.
Hmm.
They don't know if you're actually in deep sleep or not. Like, they have no idea. It's just an estimation. So we have to understand. And I think that's what people are really learning in this block, this challenge, is they're starting to learn how they feel, and they're
Hmm.
using the numbers instead of like so many people have said like I like we see all these graphs and the red is like this tall, right? And like
Hmm.
then there's like the small little rainbow of colors down here. You're like, obviously there's something going on here, right?
Right.
Like, because they're blowing these numbers away that they didn't know they had, or like they're starting to realize like, oh wow, I can do much more than I thought I could do.
Hmm.
And that's the key, is learning like, what does this feel like? And 100% feels really hard, but when you start doing
Yeah.
125%, 100% doesn't feel as hard anymore.
Right.
Right, so you start to kind of get this gauge. And I think, for people like us that have been training with power and heart rate monitors for so long, I don't have to look at my computer very often.
Right.
I know where I am. and it's based off my RPE, my rate of perceived exertion. How hard do I feel I'm working? And that's really beneficial on really hot days or
Mhm.
really hard days where my number is low, but my effort feels high.
Right.
That doesn't mean I need to start pumping out more power. It means that there's other crap going on right here where this is my new zone four today.
Mhm.
This is what zone four is for me today. Maybe it's 20, 30, 40 watts lower than it normally
Right.
is. But hey, again, estimation, today's a different day. It's different heat. There's different oxygen levels because I'm in Colorado or whatever it
Right.
is. Like, this is my new zone four today.
One of my clients who lives at sea level just went to Colorado for the week and tried to hit his power zones from
Oh, no,
sea level.
zero
And I'm
chance.
like, yeah, we got to knock that down a big
Minimum
percentage.
20%, minimum
Right.
20%, I believe.
Yeah.
It could
And
be
maybe
more.
30. Yeah.
Yeah, it should probably be more. I'm gonna have to deal with that next week heading out there. Now, I actually have altitude simulators in my house.
Do you? I was going to say, do you sleep at an altitude 10 friend?
I actually have two of them.
Hey, I
I
need
got
one of
them.
those.
I got them like in a barter situation,
Yeah.
but I didn't set it up because my wife would be like, "Are you really? We're gonna sleep
Yeah.
in this thing?" I
And you're
just tell
like,
her it makes
no,
her look
I'm going to
younger.
sleep in this.
Yeah,
I know.
and I'm like sleeping in my basement.
Oh, yeah.
But I
Yeah.
really thought about doing it, but yeah, like you have to go into those situations just knowing like this number is going to be
Right.
lower, and if you expect to see 240
Right.
on your computer, that 240 is now 220,
Yeah.
215, and understand like that's what it is. Who cares?
Well, and it was interesting because he got there a day early, did a bonus workout, which we'll talk about bonus workouts maybe. And he was so sore, he couldn't do his scheduled workouts. And it was like, did it occur to you that you're sore because you did something at a level? And, we had talked about altitude, we had talked about bias and bringing his numbers down. And yeah, so it's an interesting challenge. And I would say, again, look at the intention. If my workout has 20 minutes of zone four intensity and it's split up over a number of intervals. If I do 21 minutes, that's great. If I do 19 minutes, that's great. It's the intention of the workout. And whether it's a failure or like I do a lot of my intervals outside now. And I posted a good podcast yesterday, which talks a lot about interval training in general, but also how do we take these workouts outside? And
Mhm.
so for those of you who are on timers or those of you who also ride outside and you just want to translate your zones. And how do I do that? How do I pick the terrain? How do I figure out how to make watts when I'm going downhill or on the flat versus uphill? And at the end of the day, my intervals aren't perfect. My graphs aren't pretty, but I'm simulating what I do in real life. And it's important to do my interval work outside because that's the way I race. That's the way I ride.
Mhm.
So I encourage you if you haven't listened to it. I haven't gotten a single comment, so I'm guessing no one's listened to it yet. Listen to it. It's a very good podcast, and I think it sheds some light on why we interval train and how we execute intervals, and what's the importance of completion versus trying hard and getting in that 80% range, right? So
Totally right,
80% of completion, not 80% of intensity. So
and that also comes to like TSS. We put a lot of onus on TSS, and people are like a couple points off from their TSS, high or low, and it's like not a big deal.
right.
It's not a big deal, right? Like the TSS is just if you had that thing on erg and you did exactly what it was supposed to do,
Hmm.
then that TSS is going to come out the same. But if you go a little harder, a little lower, a little longer, a little shorter, like that TSS
Hmm.
is going to change a little bit. It doesn't necessarily mean that you changed to work out or you failed it or anything of that nature. Like it's just how the
You hit a
numbers
red light,
play.
you
It's how the numbers play out. Like that's
yeah,
just what it is. Now, do we want to be super far off the TSS?
no.
No, right? And things of that nature. And TSS is really there to kind of give us, an understanding of the impact that a workout might have on us for a recovery purpose.
Hmm.
Right. So if anyone that has training peaks and stuff like that, you can see like your CTL, which is your accumulative kind of training load, and that comes into like a point, like 60 or 70 or 100 or 150, whatever it might be. So what that's really saying is that's kind of your TSS, right? So if my level is 60, that means I'm averaging about 60 TSS every day,
Hmm.
right, for the week. And that means if I do a workout that's about 60 TSS, I'm probably not going to have that much recovery needs. So my recovery rides are probably in that 60 TSS range, where my hard workouts are going to be up in that 100 TSS range,
Per hour.
right? per hour.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So you're kind of figuring out from a load perspective like that. So don't like be too crazy on
Yeah.
any of this stuff. And that's the
Yeah.
thing is like actually all this stuff, like
I know.
as important
It's
as numbers
science, but it's
are,
yeah. They're
they're
guidelines.
guides, they're guardrails. That's all they are. Right.
Mhm.
And if guardrails are on each side of the road for a reason, right? We got some play in there, right? This is not a railroad track. They're guardrails. Bump up against them, pop back in, go the other
Right.
way. It's all good. It's all good.
So let's talk about one more thing, and this came up yesterday with, a couple of folks of how do I know when to continue if I'm having a bad workout or when I should abandon the plan? And I usually tell folk, first of all, your first interval is gonna be hard.
Hmm.
And
Your
those
warm
of
up
us
is
who
going to be hard.
right, and I think that's the other thing that people, we might have 10, 11, 12, 13 minutes of warm up in our planned workouts, but not every class does. So if you're doing the classes, you may need to add a warm up first, and I know some of you do that. I definitely take an extended warm up. Part of it is for me, I just have to get out to my course, my loop that I use for my workouts, and I know it's kind of stop and go, and it's very up and down terrain right on the coast, so I'm not going to try to execute my intervals there. But first interval I always find is kind of hard. You're kind of settling into where you should be and what it should feel like in your legs and your lungs. And second interval is usually, I think, one of the better ones, depending on what the workout is. But let's say we get to the third interval and we can't do it. What do we do? Do I give up the whole workout? Do I go back to zone two and ride this one out? Do I try again if I have more intervals? What do you do, Brian?
Um, it depends on the workout and it depends on the week. And what I would say is if it's happening early in my workout, you know, warm up was hard, first interval hard, and mentally I'm just not in it. And usually that's what it is. Like mentally, I'm just like,
You
I
don't
don't
have
even
the
want to.
fight.
I don't want to
Yeah.
be here today, right? Like if I had the option of doing that workout tomorrow, I'll bag it, right? I'll just
Hmm.
ride easy for the rest of the time that I'm on the bike, or I'll get off the bike, whatever, and I'll try to do the quality the next day if I have that
Yeah.
option. Now, if I don't have that option to move or push the workout, like it's Thursday, this is my Thursday workout. I know the weekend's going to be my long stuff, so I'm not going to do it on Friday. Then I have to do the best I can. And again, this comes back to what we were talking about before, like RPE. Like, well, what's my zone for today?
Hmm.
And most likely, if you're not hitting your numbers, your heart rate probably is, right?
Yeah.
It's probably a physical thing. If it's a mental thing, then yeah, your heart rate still might be low and you're not hitting your numbers and you're just not into it. Then it's like, you know what? Let's take the mental fight today. Can I
Hmm.
push myself through this? And then the first thing I have to say is, how am I talking to myself?
Right.
Right? Because I am not a good communicator to myself. Right? I am not the person that, like, when I'm
Negative
getting dropped,
self-talk?
I'm getting dropped out the back door of a ride. I'm not the person that's like, "Come on, Brian, you can do this. You
Right.
put the time in, the work in. You can." I'm like, "You idiot! Like, what are you doing? Like, of
You ate
course you're getting
cookies last
dropped.
night instead of
Like,
dinner and
you always drop here. Like, you suck at climbing." Like, I'm a very
right,
negative talker to myself, and it does not help me. It's not
right.
like I get mad and start pushing to the point where I have to catch myself and be like, "Hey, come on, man. Like,
Yeah.
just let's keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep pushing." And ultimately it ends up leveling out. So I have to look at that as like, this is my opportunity to work on that aspect of my cycling. I'm having a bad day inside. Like, my once I hear that first or second kind of negative thing throwing at myself, I then have to say, all right, well, this workout now is mental. Who cares
Mhm.
what's happening in the physical? Brian, come on, don't talk to yourself like that. You got this.
Yeah.
Let's just push. You're having a shit day, whatever, but you can still kind of push this. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And that becomes my workout. That's what I'm training today. I'm training my mental fortitude. I'm trying to train myself to be kinder to myself and race better that way. And then who cares about the numbers?
Right.
And then I make sure in my notes in Strava or whatever, I make sure I note that it was a good workout.
Yeah.
That was a good workout. It gave me the opportunity to work on this. I remember reading something long ago in The Art of Happiness, and the Buddhist belief of, you give thanks to ignorant people because they give you the opportunity to practice patience,
Ah.
right? And patience is a great quality. So I think of that in my workouts. Like, I'm thankful for these bad workouts because it gives me the opportunity to actually work on better self-talk for myself, which I know
Mhm.
is a huge weakness for me.
Right.
That when race day comes and it hits me, I don't have to wait 5 or 10 minutes of bad negative talk. The moment I hear it, I'm like, no, 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 that's not helping. Like,
Right.
let's think about something else. So for that fact, there is never a bad workout. It's just changing again the intention. Like, what's my ability to be better today?
Right. That's good. I agree with the mental piece, and it's funny because sometimes I'll look at my workout and I'm like, I'm not sure I can even do this today. And I do the first workout, and I just negotiate with myself. It's like, okay, do this one, see what happens. And when you nail the first one, then you're like, okay, I got it. And then you start the second one, you're like, I don't know if I can do this one. And but every time we do succeed at a workout, we feel better, and it gives us that positive sense that we can do it again.
Mhm.
And there are definitely days when I go out and for whatever reason I didn't have a good night's sleep. I was on my feet all day yesterday and didn't hydrate. And it's like, okay, you're not going to help yourself by trying to do this thing that you can't physically do. Allow yourself to modify the workout. And that doesn't mean maybe going down just a little bit because that totally changes the intention. Maybe it means riding it out in zone two. And
Well,
that's okay too.
yeah, I think as a coach, we have a good understanding of different workouts and
Yeah.
what to do. So like if I'm not hitting my my threshold, let's say that day, it's very easy for me to say, okay, you know what? Well, I'm just going to do some sprint repeats or something like
Yeah.
that. That's what I have today. Or you know
Right.
what? I gotta bag this and turn this into a zone two.
Hmm.
Right? We understand those type of training and the benefits we get from it, where a lot of our athletes don't. They're
Right.
like, all right, maybe it's better for me just to drop this 10% or 15% and get through it. I
Right.
think that is also a good like that is a good solution when you don't know, right? Like,
Right.
what's my option here? If you're deciding to continue on with the given workout, just drop it.
Yeah.
Drop it 10,
The only
15%.
disadvantage of that, I think, is you're accumulating fatigue that maybe isn't really
Not
giving
as
you the fitness.
beneficial.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so it's a toss up. I think it depends. But now the other thing is you may find you drop one interval and then you're able to come back and execute the rest of the workout. You just needed a breather there for a moment. So
Yeah.
I guess just to kind of conclude, I would say, because Brian likes to talk and so do I, we could go all day about this. I would say your workout is never a failure. If you did the workout, you were a success. Whether you executed the plan 100% or not, you're still a success for getting on your bike and doing your workout as planned. And
Mhm.
if I need to modify, I may modify, and hopefully I make a good choice in my modification. It usually isn't go harder though. That's the other thing we see. People are like, "Oh, this didn't feel hard enough, so I went up a zone." It's like, no, 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 that's not the answer. That totally changes your workout, and probably your
Correct.
zones aren't right. And but anyways, so it's never a failure. I have a coach friend who always says, "We don't fail. We either win or we learn." And it's like, okay, that's good. I'm not losing here. I'm learning here. And that's important. So I would say that's our takeaway. Try to change that self talk or that Facebook talk when you start saying, oh, I'm just not good enough. Yes, you are. You're good enough. Your power zone, you can't not be good enough in power based training.
Totally.
It's for you, right?
And the one thing with power-based training too is never expected to get easy.
Right.
Ever.
Because you're always
Ever.
changing the bar.
Right? I can do the same workouts for 10 years in a row. It's never going to get easier. My power just goes up. And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of power zone training, right? That's the beauty of this stuff is that the workout is always appropriate for you, regardless if your FTP is 50 or 500. The workout is appropriate for you. The
Hmm.
difference is when you're taking another class that's just using resistance as a goal number, right? Like, oh, resistance 40. Well, yes, 5 years down the road, resistance 40 is not challenging for me as it
Right.
was 5 years ago, right? So I would see this kind of improvement there, where Power Zone it really shouldn't, right? So
Right.
with Power Zone, if I do the workout that we're doing tomorrow, right, which is I forget what the TSS of it is, but let's just say it's a 70 to 60 TSS. If my FTP goes up 100 watts next year, and I do that same workout, you know what? It's still 60 TSS.
Yeah.
Same, Same, as far as my body's concerned, same exact TSS,
Yeah.
because it's based on percentage of my FTP. And that's the thing, is regardless of where your FTP is, your workout, my workout, and his workout, all the same. It's
Yeah.
the same, even if we're 100 watts apart from one another. That's the beauty of all this, is
Hmm.
there is no leg.
Yeah.
There is none. Like, this is not above you. This is not below you. This is
You.
it. This
Yeah.
is you. Now, could you do more time? Sure. Right. Maybe I should be doing a 2 hour workout instead of a 1 hour workout. That's volume. That's a different story. But the workout and the intensities are, it's even. I love it. Like, that's why everyone should do this.
Yeah. Anyways, let's do a quick. We're not going to go through the schedule this week. You get the schedule. It was in your email this morning. So, anything you want to add, Brian, about the workouts this week
Yeah.
as we approach? Yeah.
Yeah. For this week that we're currently in, like, as far
Yeah.
as tomorrow being
Tomorrow.
Thursday. Yeah, so I got to kind of go back to really see what it is. Like, tomorrow, everyone should be doing that 40-40,
Yeah.
right? I think it's
Those are
8 or
good.
6 40 by 40s. And again, it comes down to intention, what we were talking about here. What are we really looking at when we're doing a block like this? If you really look at that time block, and I should have probably pulled it up, but that time block, 40 seconds on, 40 seconds off. So it's a minute 20. We're doing 8 of them. So we're really looking at like a 10-minute block, right? So as a coach, what do I see? Do I actually see these spikes? No, I don't. What I see is the block of time that you're, for 10 to 12 minutes, going to be, your heart rate is just going to be up, probably at
Hmm.
threshold or above, right? Basically, for a 10-minute block. And your power output for that 10-minute block is going to be a lot higher than if I asked you to do a straight 10-minute block. So your heart rate's probably going to be a little higher, and your power output's going to be a little bit higher than what you would normally do. That's what those little mini breaks allow us to accomplish. So
Right.
that's why we're doing this. Like, you could actually look at this. Yes, it's a VO2 max workout, but really it's kind of a threshold workout, but it's just
Yeah.
allowing us to hold our VO2 max longer than doing a 5-minute chunk or a 6-minute chunk of time. So when you understand what the purpose of this workout is, it's really about just getting that heart rate up, elevated, and maintaining it up there for that kind of 10-minute block. Then you start to
Hmm.
see, like, oh, each of these little intervals aren't really that important. So if I do
Right.
hit a little low on number 5 and a little high on number 6, I don't really care,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't really matter. It's what's this averaging out to? What's my heart rate for this time? So again, you trying to keep it somewhat even from the first one to the last one. And I'm talking about the very first one to the very last one. Um, and if anything, let them build over
Yeah.
there. But it's also not bad if you start high and it drops a little bit as you go. That's okay as well. Like, again, there's
Hmm.
no failure here. Just get that heart rate up and roll with it, man.
Yeah.
But this is going to be a hard day, because Tuesday was also a very hard day. This is a tough week, man. Like,
And
this is
Saturday's a hard day. I know.
like this is
We're
this is a
doing
tough.
30s tomorrow in the class, and it's the same concept, right? It's like I could not hold, we're doing zone 6. I could not hold zone 6 for that full interval, but I can do a push and a recovery and a push and a recovery, but the heart rate stays up. So I get that effect of holding that intensity, which is great.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, I'm just going to say this is your hard week this time, folks, if you haven't noticed. And next week we're going to keep some intensity up, but we're going to keep all the durations. We want you to be fresh. We don't want you to be stale. And then we'll go into our power profile next Saturday. So I'm excited. It's going to be good. The next challenge is
yeah.
going to be super fun. I'm excited about that too. And I don't know, Brian, if you saw the poll. It was very interesting to me. I put up a poll yesterday
The
about
zones.
which zone do you like? It's not like I have play favorites or anything. And we know that, that's kind of a silly question, but it was very interesting how many of you, and I see this in conversations as well, you're like, yeah, zone 4, I could do it all day long. Zone 5 scares me. Or a lot of people actually find zone 3 to be hard and zone 5 to be hard, but they can do everything else. So it was very interesting to see the comments, especially. So thanks
Yeah,
everybody who
I
played
voted
along.
for zone 2. I voted zone
I
2.
know.
Like, who doesn't love zone
All
2?
day.
Like,
Yeah.
all day, just out, like, watching the leaves change. Like, I love
Yeah.
zone 2. So for me, like, zone 2 and zone, like, 6.
Yeah.
Like, give me those two, like, these 30-30s, 40-40s. Like, give me those all day.
Hmm.
And then give me, like, a long, easy ride.
Yeah.
You can keep zone 4.
I know.
If I never see a zone 4 workout again in my life, I'd be a very happy person. Like,
Yeah.
it's just miserable.
Well, and
And
I'm
there's a
like
reason.
you. Well, it's the mind. That's the thing. I
Yeah,
don't
and
even
your
think
energy
it's the
systems. Like
right,
your body is like, what the F are we doing here? Is this
right,
VO2 max? Is this below VO2 max? Like you're just
yep,
up and down, up and down, up and down. It's like I gotta like it's hard. It's hard. And
yeah,
we're kind of playing with that a little bit next Thursday
yeah,
in my workouts. Like we do these VO2 max builds where we're going to build up from like 70%, 85%, 100%. And then we do a VO2 max for like 30 seconds. And then you drop back to 70%. So
yeah,
typically when we do VO2 max, what's our response? Is to like, woof, like
right,
foot off the gas, right? But next week, I'm going to be asking you to recover at 70%, zone three, right? So we're still working here.
yeah.
And the idea is you can still recover there. It just takes longer.
Hmm.
So,
But the more you do it, the more
oh,
you can recover.
yes. Well,
Yeah.
the more you get comfortable with knowing that you're going to recover.
Hmm.
And real quick on that too, recovery, like especially with these 40/40s, like we know we're not going to recover in time.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that you can do to help yourself recover is exhale hard.
Yes.
Recovery breathing is not panting, right? That's not, you are not going to get oxygen in. Just big exhales, right? Because then it's going to force you to kind of take a good deep breath in. So the deeper breaths you can take while recovering, the faster you will recover, hands down. It's going to feel really weird at first, right? It's not going to feel good. But once you start practicing it, you're going to start to realize like that's really how you recover is these nice, good, deep, hard breaths, like really hard exhales. Like recovery
Yeah.
breathing is about getting rid of the CO2, get it out, let that oxygen get back in, right? Clear that CO2, clear that lactate is our goal when we recover.
Yeah. Anyways,
Awesome.
we're going to move on with our day. Thanks for
Yeah.
everybody who joined. We will post this up so you can see it if you missed it. You don't know that I just said that because you're not here. But, anyways, have a great week. Throw out your training questions as we go, and we'll see you next week. Brian will be somewhere in the United States, most
Someplace.
likely. Yeah. Awesome.
All
Okay.
right, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye bye.